Welcome to the Ask SQL Family podcast. This is episode number 19. And our guest today is Simon Whiteley.
As Chief Cloud Architect with Adatis Consulting, Simon has been working with the Microsoft BI stack for a decade, starting off building traditional warehouses with SSIS and SSAS, but bringing in alternative technologies where needed. Most recently, he has turned into head to the clouds, advocating new methods of getting insight to the right people. Whether it's automating file ingestion into Azure Data Lakes, applying massive compute via SQL Data Warehouse and Data Lake Analytics, or simply shifting your current SSIS packages into the cloud, he can help. Big believer in the wider data community, regularly present on cloud analytics architectures and run the SQL Surrey PASS chapter and co-organises the London PASS chapter. Simon is a strong advocate of the use of modern development practices in the SQL world. Data Geek, Cloud Herder, Speaker, Cyclist, Microsoft Data MVP and General Tech Nerd. Hi Simon.
Hello.
Thank you for accepting my invitation to the podcast, SQL Player.
More than welcome. Thank you for doing my user group.
No worries. Happy to help, as always. Could you at the beginning tell me what is your name, full name, and where do you live?
Okay, so I'm Simon Whiteley. I live in a place called Gravesend recently in Kent, previously London. So I'm kind of London, but
it's
not quite London anymore. London in my heart.
It depends who do you ask. They tell you that it's not London, or it's a part of London, or it's a periphery of
No,
London.
it's really far out of London. I live in Kent.
Yeah. What are you doing for a living?
Okay, so I am the Chief Cloud Architect for a company called Adatis. So we're a consultancy, we do advanced analytics consulting. Used to be, BI developer. Used to write lots of SSIS, lots of SSAS, RS. These days, it's all entirely Data Lakes, Databricks, SQL Data Warehouse. It's using that modern Azure stack. So everything I do is making sure we're doing kind of the most modern way. We're learning the most recent approaches. I personally tend to move between a lot of different clients, making sure we're sharing learnings, making sure if we built something really cool in one place, we're actually sharing that with the other people we're working with, and we don't have two entirely different ways of doing the same thing. So I spend a lot of time across a lot of different clients just talking tech.
Okay, you're synchronizing the works of other people.
Yeah, there's lots of that. Dipping my oar in, going, no, there's a better way. generally annoying our consultants. That's kind of my role.
Yeah, when you set the model architecture or model data warehouse, for example, there's a model of everything basically those days. What do you mean by those? By that?
So that is the big shift of taking all the learnings from big data.
Mm-hmm.
There's very much the idea that you're either a big data developer or you're a SQL developer. Mm-hmm. And there's loads of different tools and techniques used between the two. So modern data warehouse is all about taking those approaches, taking the big data ways of doing things, and just making it normal, making it part of how you do BI. So every BI solution we do these days has a data lake. It has elastic compute. It uses things like Parquet and Avro and OLC, and it's kind of all these things that used to be just big data, and just making it part of just how we do things.
Mm-hmm. So there's basically no modern solution without Azure, without cloud solution.
Well, that's not true anymore. It was that way. So very much it was if you're in Azure, we go, great, you're going Data Lake, you're going Databricks, you're going all this modern new tech. And if you came to me and said, I'm going on-prem, I would wince and go, okay, you're going SSIS, you're doing things traditional, we're not elastic scaling, it's the very different ways of working. 2019 has big data clusters, which gives an in-house Spark engine based on Docker, which means you have a lake, you have inbuilt Spark, you have all of the things we've now been doing and calling the modern data warehouse in Azure. You can now say, I'm going to do this on-prem. I mean, you still have to have a bit of tin underneath. You still have to have a big enough VM host to support the maximum capacity of the scaling and stuff. But all the tools and techniques, the landing things as flat files so you can acquire data really quickly. All of that stuff you can now do as on-prem learnings when 2019 comes out, because it's not out yet. But when it is, so it's a big change.
Yes.
The way we talk about on-prem is going to change a lot this year.
True.
I sound like a Microsoft salesperson.
That's okay.
I'm just scared because there's a lot of stuff I'm going to have to reapply. Lots of ways of working that we kind of written off, never having to think about that on-prem, that suddenly now is going to come into every single on-prem conversation. So I need to get a lot of solutions, a lot of patterns, and a lot of it is going to be taking what we do already and reapplying it. But there's a lot of rework and a lot of rethinking about how we do stuff.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, we still advocates of Microsoft stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's good. It means I still have a job this year because everything's changed again.
Yeah. Every single month is changing something. Something's
absolutely.
changing. Yeah. So when you're talking about the technology, and so I know that you are doing a lot of stuff with Microsoft tools and everything. But what is I just feeling that one of the solutions, one of the services is the closure for you, and I'm interested which one of those two. So the question is, what is the closer to your soul? Azure SQL Data Warehouse or Azure Data Factory?
Either way, one of them is going to get really angry with me. So it's very weird that I'm going to say this, but it's definitely Data Factory.
Data Factory?
Yeah. Because Data Warehouse is awesome. But it does a good job, and you can do like very, very heavy crunching, and it's kind of cool. But it's not solving a new problem. You know, you could always just have a really, really big SQL server and put stuff on it. You can have Cassandra, you can have Snowflake. There are different kinds of MPP engine you can have. Whereas Data Factory now, definitely V2, definitely the current iteration, solves so many problems for me. You know, because all things like having to use BIML to make SSIS packages, and having to write PowerShell to crank out so many iterations of ADF v1. All of the pain of creating like any kind of orchestration and scheduling in Azure is gone with V2. You know, because
even in generic pipelines, so
yeah, I mean, you can just build a generic pipeline and then say, now run this same pipeline with a few variables for each of my 1,000 tables.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because it used to be you could get around the problems by code automation, but at the end of the day, to support it, you still then have 1,000 separate pipelines to support. And now I can just say, well, there's a generic thing, and that'll do whatever I want, no matter what the data source is, and that's key to the whole ethos of data lakes. You know, I don't want to build a separate thing for every single file. I want to make it as you want to remove the barrier to entry. Yeah, I want to build frameworks, and I want to say. So now if I've got a client who's using 10 different tables in their SQL database, and they go, actually, I need another one, then all they need to do is just add a line to a database, and then magically that table comes in next time. So the reason you use data lakes is to remove the barrier to entry of getting data into a system. To say, I want to make it as easy as possible to start collecting that data. I don't necessarily want to process it. I don't know what logic I'm going to apply. I don't know how I'm going to use that data. But I want to start keeping it. And if I can just either add a JSON file or change a database record, and suddenly that works. And that means my business users can then have a Power App over the top of it and go, here are the tables I would like to keep. And I can just push that. That's no longer my problem. My business users define what data gets pulled into a lake. That makes my life so easy, and it really gets behind the idea of data lakes. So it's kind of like, I think for the business, Data Factory's had more of a change. So Data Warehouse is neat and does a job, but the business users don't really see that much of it. It tends to be abstracted away from business users, whereas Data Factory actually has some use for them. It has some purpose. They get a tangible return based on Data Factory. So for me, it makes a difference.
Yeah, true.
That was a long answer.
Cool, very good. And another one is extension of Azure Data Factory, which is the private preview feature Dataflow.
Dataflow?
What do you think about that one?
I mean, you know it's close to my heart. Again, that's a business user thing. So we've gone the whole big data processing element. You know, we're using a lake, we've got raw data landing in a lake. It's maybe too big, or it's the wrong shape, it's coming in a bad format, or it's coming in as streaming data. And that means I can't put it into SQL Data Warehouse. So I'm using the lake to kind of fix those problems, the 4 V's of big data and all that. So I'm trying to get that data and making it accessible. And Databricks is now the de facto answer. So it was Data Lake Analytics for a while. And again, someone would have to go away and learn SQL. They'd have to learn this new language which is used in one single tool to do it. And now Data Lake Analytics is kind of fallen out of favor. Everyone's pushing Databricks. And again, you need to go into Databricks and you can write SQL in there. But you need to use either Scala or Python at some point. Maybe a bit of R, maybe a bit of SQL. But now that's kind of been great, and we started using it, and we're using it in lots of places, and we built lots of wrapper kind of framework patterns, and that's great. So I can just pass some parameters in and have it automatically process some data. But again, someone has to understand that. To support it, someone needs to understand Python or Scala and go in and manage that. That's another language I need. Whereas data flow means I can pass it to someone like a SSIS developer can pick that up and go, okay, I know what this is about. This is just a data flow.
I will put this component here.
Okay, it's going horizontally. It's not going vertically, it's going horizontally, so it's a bit different than SIS. But otherwise, it's designed to be really familiar and similar to that kind of traditional BI user who's finding the whole thing intimidating, going, oh no, do I need to reskill? Do I need to retrain? Do I throw away all my knowledge of the past 10, 15 years of development? And it's going, okay, no, this is something I get, but it's going to write it in Scala behind the scenes, so it's actually going to run natively, efficiently on Databricks, and it gives you a lot of control. I mean, there's critics of it, there's people who don't like it, because if it is seen as an abstraction layer, it's, convincing people, don't write code, code's too hard, use this graphical user interface instead, and, there's valid reasons for that. But you can drop down. For me, it's for the simple stuff, for the business user stuff, for the data analyst level, where they don't need to retrain, they don't want to reskill, but they need to be able to, you can have the people who understand the transformation rules designing your transformation pipelines because it's nice and easy. And then if there's something really hard that is complex or is needs complex performance optimization, you can drop down to the Scala. You can have someone writing the hard specialist bits and not doing the I need to knock out 1,000 of these kind of jobs. So it's separating the problem. You've got straightforward business transformation. Anyone can do that. It's really straightforward. And then your specialists, and it's kind of meaning you can balance that team out. So it's cool. Works for me.
It's cool because you can create basically the business logic with data flow without code. This is cool. And it's a very, very efficient process.
The thing I've not tried to do yet is to make the data flow fully parameterized, so I can apply the same logic to different data sets.
I tried. You can't.
So that for me is the problem. Because I've gone so far with normal data factory in terms of getting it so it's code driven, so it's parameter driven, getting it so I don't need 1,000 different pipelines to process my files. And then if I drop down to data flow, I'm suddenly, I need 1,000 different pipelines to manage my files. So it does have some limitations still.
But I think there's a little difference between Azure Data Factory pipeline and data flows. The data flows is, I guess, it should basically design for specific reason, for specific scenario, and basically framework probably will not help here.
No. But then it's the same in code. We can have things automatically checking data types, checking files are in the right shape. We can do all of that automatically.
From the source perspective, for example, you should be able to apply the parameter, but currently you can't.
But to do business transformation, to apply logic, nothing's going to write that automatically for you. No matter what the vendor promises you, it's not going to do it for you. So you either have a separate SQL script for each of your data sources, or a separate data flow for each of your sources, or a separate Python script. You need to have your transformations documented somewhere. So data flow is somewhere you can use to keep your transformations. Some people won't want to, and some people will want to have maybe SparkQL. They want to have the SQL written inside the Spark engine because that's more natural to them. More power to them, they can. So it's options. It's all about having different tools available to you to do different things. It's certainly not everything's going to happen in data flows from now on. I'd say much more likely that there'll be generic things that can be one generic Python script that runs for every single thing, just saying what structure should it be, is it in the right shape, are all the data types right. You don't need a data flow to do that because you can't parameterize it. So pass it to a single script, tell it what shape it should be in, and that'll run. And you can use that same notebook for every single file type. So that kind of stuff I wouldn't use Dataflow for. And then only when it is file specific, drop down and use it there.
That might be a strange question. What's changed in IDF between version 1 and version 2?
All of that. I mean, so
we stay here and the whole night. No, seriously, in some points,
I mean, the variable driven stuff, so suddenly you don't need to generate a ton of script, you can just have reusable components, but also the control flow stuff. So when everyone picked up ADF and they wanted it to be SSIS, they wanted it to work the same way, and so many people were frustrated with ADF v1 because it wasn't SSIS. And now the fact that you can have failure paths, you can have for each loops, you can have weights and web lookups, and you can get reference data from a database and use it as a parameter. All these things, it's so sad that we're excited about it, because it's just the most obvious thing you should be able to do. And that's like the big shift between ADF v1 and v2. It became a product that actually you can use properly, seriously in an enterprise situation. V1 you could barely. You had to have a load of workarounds, a load of code, and it kind of worked. Yeah. Honestly, for the entire life cycle of v1, I didn't use it. I used it once or twice on projects where we thought we'd try and force it, and it was okay. Most of the time we used SIS. We had SSIS sitting on a VM, and we were sad about it. So V2 is just so much more acceptable. It is a good product, and that's so weird because I was such a hater of Data Factory for so long. It was one of those things, you mention Data Factory and I go, no one's going to use that. Now I love it. As you said, I love it more than I love SQL Data Warehouse, and that's dear to my heart.
One of the questions during my session was when this Dataflow private preview will become public. But I haven't heard your answer.
Soon.
Soon. This year?
All I can say soon. Yes, 2019.
So it is in this year, in Microsoft nomenclature.
I can neither confirm nor deny any of these comments.
Exactly. Yeah, I know, and I know why.
But yeah, no, it is coming soon. It's coming soon to the point of people who are kicking off projects now. I'd probably recommend they look at it and they consider using it, because it is getting near to that point in its life cycle.
Yeah.
That's about as details I can be in that answer.
Last question about the technology.
Okay.
Is the SSIS dead or alive?
That was another question from tonight that I was very good and I didn't say anything about. Do I think SSIS is dead? Yeah. So it's becoming a niche use case. So there's very few scenarios when I would recommend SSIS now, and it tends to be if you have a massive team with a ton of SSIS existing, you've got a lot of in-house SSIS skills, and all of your application exists as SSIS packages, and you want to lift and shift. Absolutely use SSIS, there's nothing wrong with it. So you've got Data Factory has the SSIS integration runtime behind it, install SSIS packages on it, and it will work the same as an on-prem SIS box. What it won't do is take advantage of most of the whole Azure, the point of having Azure. It won't elastically scale. So you can have multiple nodes, but all that will do will help with concurrency of package execution. So if you're trying to do one massive package, then you need to pay for a really big VM to actually get that to work properly. And it takes 20 minutes to turn on. So absolutely everything that I do these days, we're trying to, you're trying to tie the amount of compute that you're using as closely to your workload as possible. So things that have a 20-minute workload are not tied at all to your the thing. So it just means that SSIS for me doesn't scale properly and is too slow in terms of startup to actually fit in a modern data warehouse. But if you want to get there quickly and you've already got a load of SIS stuff, by all means use it as a lift and shift. Get your whole platform onto Azure, get it working using your existing stuff, and then it's basically technical debt to go and strip that out and slowly replace it with things that naturally scale more. But that's all I see it for these days, is that natural. It's a stepping stone to moving to the right wings in things that are more cloud native. That's all I use it for these days.
The new solution will be adopted year by year by new or existing companies. Consequently, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and if the project or your, let's say, performance point of view needs, more robust and faster process, probably we will adopt the ADF as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have budget time for that. Yeah.
So it's not so much ADF, it's Databricks. So it's using an in-memory Spark engine.
Yeah.
And whether you do that by accessing Databricks directly, or whether you do it using ADF as an abstraction layer, either way, what you want is a Spark layer, because that's the thing that can naturally scale out over multiple nodes.
Yeah.
No matter how you get to that Spark layer, that's the way you should be going.
Let's talk about a little bit about the private things. Not really deep private, but
I'm an open book.
I know that you have, let's say, a lot of bicycles at home. 7?
7.
Do you remember?
Well, technically 6. One's my wife's. So 6 for me, 1 for the wife.
You have 7 at home. Why? What do you do with all those stuff apart of cycling, of course?
They mainly live in the garage. That's why I had to move to Kent, is so I can have a garage that can fit enough bikes in. In all honesty, I probably use one bike more than every other bike. I have my cargo bike, which is like the big long one with a plank on the back, so I can carry, several bags, several PCs, a crate of beer.
You're doing this for shopping.
No. So I don't drive. That's you can see the London ethos. I've never needed a car because London.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to the supermarket, I ride my big old bike and I fill up the back. It's basically a pickup truck in bike form. It's the way forward. And it's not too slow. I rode from Lyon to Marseille this year. It's 400 kilometers on a cargo bike. Is a long way to go.
Year?
Yeah. Last year. 2019.
Exactly.
It wasn't last week.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I remember. It was in France, yeah?
Yeah.
Big challenge, basically.
Yeah, and I'm not fit enough for that these days. I'm specialist. I'm generally unfit, but I've got good cycling legs. That's about it.
Tell me about that journey.
The journey? Well, so it's a charity ride. So with the Datas, we do it like sort of every other year. We do some big challenge thing. So we did London to Paris originally, and that was good. Rode down, got the ferry across, rode through. This last year was Lyon to Marseille, down the river, through Avignon, through Valence, through some beautiful places. It was good. It was warm. It's like it was middle of summer, so going up to Marseille, we didn't quite realise there's a massive hill, like a huge hill going into Marseille, and it was like maybe 30 degrees.
Yeah, I can imagine.
On a cargo bike.
That you start looking for the tourists.
Yeah, if there was a bus, I could have just hitched a ride with my bike. I would have been very happy. But we made it. It was good.
Yeah.
Didn't break down. No major injuries. It's all fine.
Remind me how long the distance was?
400 kilometers.
400 kilometers, wow.
And we raised a load of money. So we raised over 10k for different charities.
Amazing.
So, yeah, it's cool.
So every year you are doing this charity?
So far it's every other year. But we want to start doing every year, so we're talking about what we do this summer now.
Okay, cool. That's good. And every year or every other year is a little bit different activities, yeah?
Yeah. So we're getting some pushback now. Everyone's like, did it have to be cycling again? Obviously, I'm biased. I want to cycle, so we'll see.
Okay, we are sitting in the building. What is it called? Code Node?
Code Node, yeah.
Tell me something about that user group. It's London SQL or SQL London?
So it's the London PASS chapter, technically.
Yes.
So it gets called the London SQL User Group, the SQL London User Group, the many different user group things.
Doesn't matter, everyone knows what we're talking about.
I have a secret campaign because just like every other SQL group in the entirety of the world, it shouldn't be called SQL anymore.
Yes.
Because we're doing Data Factory, we're doing all this other stuff, we're doing Azure.
A lot of conferences changed their name.
Yeah. So the other group that I look after, SQL Surrey, is now the Surrey Data Platform Group, and something similar is going to happen to London at some point, but don't know when yet.
Okay.
We'll have a rebranding event at some point.
When will you reveal that?
When I convince the other organisers that we should do that. It's by no means agreed, that is not an announcement.
Okay.
but it should come soon.
Cool. So, another question related to a little bit to the technology, but we'll back to this. So, what is your hobby basically?
My hobby? Okay, there's a couple. Cycling, if you didn't get that. I do a lot of board gaming, so I'm a massive tabletop gamer.
Gaming.
Oh yeah, we've got...
Oh.
The wife is a massive board game fan. We have a bookcase just full of different games, so anytime I can get a crowd of people around a table and play a game, I'm a big fan. Don't talk to me about Monopoly, Cluedo, it's not that kind of thing. And cooking. I am an avid chef. I spend a lot of my time cooking.
Wow.
It's
another amazing thing. I'm really happy that I asked you all that.
If I've got spare time, I'm probably in the kitchen.
Really? Oh.
And so my wife is French, and she's a big baking fan. So it's good. So I make food, she makes cakes, and she's French, so patisserie and all that kind of stuff. So together we make people fat, essentially. We make people fat, and then we get them to play games, and then I go for a ride to burn it off, and it's all good.
Oh, yeah,
kind of works.
I think it's balancing. Yeah. When did you start your adventure with Microsoft Data Platform or whatever it was at the beginning?
So 2005, I think. 2005, 2006, around then. So I started off, actually 2004, I worked for IBM for a year, and I had the horror of building reporting systems in Lotus Notes and all kind of stuff like that, and that was a bad experience. Bit of Hyperion Brio, a bit of, a few other things around that time. But then my first job, load of access databases, good old access, building reports. We had this a process on a Monday morning of this access database would churn through and create all of the company's reports, and it would take like 6 hours using pure access reports, crunching and churning and doing all that stuff. And that was my first realization of how bad BI can be. And then
you heard during the university probably, or something?
No, I didn't do a tech degree.
Okay.
No, I did a business degree. I did nothing but management and accounting and marketing and economics and all of that kind of fluffy businessy stuff. So I always knew I was always a techie. I spent my childhood building PCs with my dad in like the garage doing that kind of thing. So university.
I believe the passion is even more important than the official.
I've always thought, you can pick up tech, but I didn't know much about how businesses work, how people deal with data, how people deal with like marketing. And BI, it's good having that backing. Being able to go to a marketing department and say, what are your challenges, and actually understand how they work and the theory and the fundamentals behind it. It kind of helps with that, working with these different people, going, I know a bit of HR, a bit of marketing, a bit of accounting, a bit of economics. Obviously, we were talking 15 years ago, so probably a bit rusty. I couldn't walk into a marketing department and work as a marketeer, but it just helps having that familiarity. It gets you started in that conversation, knowing the kind of challenges that they face. And then, we got SQL Server. We replaced all access databases.
In the same company?
Yeah.
Okay.
We eventually, we brought SSAS in, so I helped build the very first cube there. And a lot of it was kind of that internal, didn't really see a lot of the world, didn't go to other conferences, kind of had that little very kind of bubble. We only knew what we knew, and everything was an incremental improvement. And I stayed there for 7 years in that company. And then when I left, I joined Data's where I am now. I 3 main jobs. And it was like that, going out into the world and going, right, okay, so all this stuff that I've learned and taught myself and worked with over 7 years, is that actually the way people do things? Does that actually work? And the answer is some. There was definitely things I didn't know that well. Definitely things I'd done that no one else had done. So it's like that weird mix of, kind of a balance of skills. And you get a lot of that. People joining the company, we go, what do you know? And it's like, I know a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and tons about that, and then a little bit of that. And you kind of get that imbalance, and that's what it's about, kind of and then it's about smoothing that out. Filling in any gaps, making sure people have that kind of a decent bit of knowledge about everything, and then, specialisms where they know more than everyone else, and that makes for a really good problem-solving team. You get a load of people around a problem, and there's people who, they all understand the same language that they're talking, but people have like different depths and different viewpoints and different perspectives.
Yeah, exactly, different perspectives. Yeah, absolutely.
If all the problems are fixed by one person, you get a very skewed solution in the end of the day.
True. That's true. in every business, basically.
Yeah. It's really funny at the moment, because there's this whole shift. We've got like a load of the old guards, you've got the people who've been doing BI for 15, 20 years, and they have very firm ideas about how things work, and they've got a massive depth of experience about a load of tools that people don't use anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm really depressed, but my MDX knowledge is just useless these days. And then you've got this whole swathe of the youngers coming in. You've got grad students coming in who they've learned Python, they've learned R, they've learned some of the languages that we haven't historically said that's a BI language. It's not C#, it's not SQL, that's not Microsoft BI, and now it's core to everything that we do.
Yeah.
So you got to learn the old guard who are heavily just trying to learn a language that all our grads are like, yeah, we know that. Of course, we know how to play Python. So it's good, and it's a nice challenge in that we've got people, the old guard can teach them. This is the ways of working. This is the methodology. This is Kimball, and this is the problems that you get if you build it in this way. And then you think people coming in with a wave of new learnings, new ideas, and it's that good blend. You need that mix of experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And basically, you have those experienced people in Adatis.
Yeah.
Tell me about a couple of words about the team, the company.
Okay, so we're now, I never know, 60, 70 people, something like that. It's different every time you ask. Yeah, well that's it. We kind of, so I joined nearly 6 years ago now, and we were 10 people. I was like person number 10. And now to be 60, 70 people, to go to the office and have people I've barely actually spoken to is just a weird experience. But it's really good because we've now got such a rich mix of backgrounds and where people are coming from, and yeah, it's good. So the culture's generally good. The culture's core to what we do, and it's hard. Consultancy is hard.
Yeah.
You have to travel to clients. You spend a lot of the time on the road, and you have to have people expect you to be an expert on everything and be hammering questions at you saying, how does that work? What do you do there? What's that scenario? Where have you done that before? So it is a fairly pressurized job, but it's also fun.
Yes.
So it's not for everyone, but I love it. That is what I do. I love, consulting around the data platform, especially given how much it's changing. And given, if I was still answering the same old SSRS questions I was dealing with 10 years ago, then it wouldn't be for me. But given almost, every 6 months, the answer to the questions are different these days because everything's evolving so quickly and everything's changing. And it's been a difficult period for a lot of people because it's in so much flux. If you started the project a year ago, you'd be using Data Lake Analytics for everything. And now if you start a project, you'd be using Databricks for everything. And that's caused a lot of uncertainty for people. People are saying, well, that's what you're telling me now. Am I going to believe you in 6 months' time? You're going to tell me something else. So it's difficult, but it's fun.
What do you like the most in your role?
In my role?
Yeah, in your role, working as in the consultancy company.
So for me, it's getting to work with that big range of people. So because of my role, I don't tend to be. It's both good and frustrating. You've got the really good feeling when you finish a project and you deliver it and you're like, I built that. But my role's different. I don't get that feeling of start to finish because I get involved in lots of different projects and usually quite near the start. Usually when there's lots of technical uncertainty, I'm there to try to de-risk projects, to say, oh, we don't know how to do that. Cool. This is how you would do that. This is the patterns. This is where Microsoft's going. So obviously, being an MVP, I've obviously got that kind of view into the product teams, into how things are working, where the roadmap is. Being a gold partner, I've got a different avenue into the same.
Sure.
So I've got quite a good view of where things are going. So I can go in and give that recommendation and make sure people are designing it right and setting it up for success, to use a horrible business term. But I get involved in lots of that early phase projects. And then dragged in, to do any technical spikes and technical troubleshooting. I never get that day of just going in and I'm like, today's going to be easy. I've got just stuff I need to crack through. Because, my day on site with the client tends to be, Simon, we've saved up all of these horrible problems that we don't know how that works. I tend to have fairly stressful days on site. But it's good. Again, it keeps things interesting. It's always new problems that haven't been solved yet. Because if it's already been solved, then we've shared the answer and people can go and get the answer. So it's an interesting role. It's tough. But it's exciting.
Yeah, sure.
Again, I get bored easily.
What, sorry?
I get bored easily. So, having a role that changes and having
so the easy problems to resolve is not very active,
If we've fixed it before, I'm not interested.
Yeah. So So having all those changes, every month, every week, and all those technology that you're working with, how you try to keep yourself up to date?
I mean, it's not one man. So very keen on R&D. So we have a whole research development process where all of our consultants are expected to be researching something new. So it's not just are you on a boring project, it's not going to be interesting. Part of our progression, part of the skills path, the career path, is about doing R&D, about blogging, about finding a subject that's your own. So I might be sitting there going, okay guys, there's a new thing coming out. Can someone go and look into it and write it up and write a blog and compare performance between these things? Write a patent for how to do that. Cool. That's not me doing all of that stuff. That's impossible for one man to be on top of all.
That would be very, very
so obviously, I take the interesting ones for myself, and then I gotta make sure that people are doing it.
Yeah, cool.
I spend a lot of time reading the blogs and reading the output that our guys have done so that I can give good advice. But yeah.
You need to at least you need to read a lot or watch a lot, but still consume time.
Exactly. I spend a lot of time on trains.
That might be very hard question. Depends on you. Which achievement do you satisfy the most? Whoops. We are not playing. That's okay.
I don't know. Sort of the MVP means a lot.
Yes.
That kind of thing of working in the community for a long time and kind of doing talks and running a user group and that kind of recognition means a lot. It is good.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't know. That's some achievements. Don't really keep track of that many. I'm quite I come across as fairly egotistical, but actually, there isn't that many things that I do just for me. Most of the time it tends to be a team's done thing, that kind of stuff. There's plenty of solutions that we've built, that we've designed that I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. I really, really like some of the stuff that we did. All of kind of the data sciencey stuff, and that doesn't come naturally to me. I'm not a trained data scientist. I used to do stats a lot, but kind of not a lot these days. We done.
The really last question at the end of our conversation. Tell me and tell us where we can find you.
Okay. All over the place. If there's a conference happening and it's to do with Azure and data, I'm probably there recently. So big things. Got a pre-con coming up in SQL Bits. So myself and Terry McCann are doing a Databricks deep dive. And it'll be fun because we're doing data engineering versus data science. So he's repping the data science side of thing. There's airy-fairy mathsy people. I'm doing the real work.
This session, unfortunately, couldn't. I will be volunteering a different one.
It's all right. We'll do it again. Also doing Intelligent Cloud Conference in Copenhagen. So we're doing another pre-con around modern data warehousing. So covering all the different facets of that. Probably most SQL
Blog, Twitter.
I'm on Twitter. I haven't blogged in an age. I get people to blog for me.
Good. You have people to work with.
Well, I kick people to do R&D on certain subjects, so I wouldn't take credit for their work, obviously. But yeah, Mr. Cy Whiteley is me on Twitter, generally talking about Azure things. And if anyone has any questions about how BI works in Azure, how data science fits in, how you do any of this stuff, what's the point in a data lake, all that kind of question I just get asked on a daily basis. So if anyone wants to know anything more about that, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. Thank you for this conversation today.
That's quite all right.
Oh God, few more questions, but you can't cover that. So
It's something we could do. Can we finish it off as a Skype call? Would that work?
That would be different, backgrounds. So
yeah, true.
Change everything. So
it wouldn't have ping pong in the background.
Thank you for joining us, listening to this podcast, and time spent jointly. You can find this podcast on the website SQLplayer.net. Share this episode if you like it, and let us know if you want to hear a specific person from the SQL community, or maybe about an interesting topic of technology.